It's college football season, which means you need the unbeatable coverage of Sling starting at $35 a month. Sling has all the big games on all the biggest channels like ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN3, SEC Network, ACC Network, Fox, Big Ten Network, Pac-12 Network, and the Longhorn Network, all for the best price. You can stream on any device, record up to 50 hours with your included DVR space, and pause or change your service at any time. Check out sling.com for special offers. Sling, the live TV you love at a price you'll love. Try it today. Welcome to the Andy Staples Show, presented by Sling. And oh boy, I'm out of town right now, but I got a photo sent to me by my lovely bride on Tuesday night. And if you're watching on the YouTube stream, you see what this photo is, but I'll describe it for you lovely podcast listeners. It is 2 bottles of Bijan Mustardson. 2 glorious bottles. Somebody is getting their mouth's ankles broken next week. It's going to be me or Ari. And I don't know, the more points Texas gets, the more worried I am, Ari, that it's going to be me.
Yeah, you didn't describe that picture properly. That's Ari's downfall.
Well, there's 2 bottles. One of those is going to stay with me. One of them is going to you. And one of us is going to get to enjoy it in a leisurely fashion, maybe on some bratwurst or something. The other one is going to have to down an entire bottle during the show next Friday. And Ari, I got to say, listen, you're getting more points by the day, it feels like.
Well, it's 20 now. So, I don't know if it's going to pop up over 21. But until it gets over 21, I won't feel like I cleared another hurdle yet. So, I don't know. Maybe, the 20-point spread isn't that big, Andy. Like, to me, that seems like that it could be a competitive football game for at least a half.
Well, that's the thing. You can have a competitive game where a team covers a 20-point spread. Like, it could even be competitive into the third quarter, and then a team – I'll give you an example involving Alabama, except it was one where they lost. That the 44-18 national title game that Clemson beat Alabama in, the reason Clemson beat them by so much is Alabama did some desperate things as the game went on to try to get back in the game. They had the fake field goal and some other stuff. So that's you can easily get yourself in that situation, even if the game is competitive. The other thing that you can have a problem is if the favored team blows the other team out in the first half and then empties the bench, you could have garbage time backdoor cover. And that's honestly what I'm more concerned about.
Yeah, I think that Alabama is going to cover it easily, which makes me think that I have a shot to potentially not have to eat all this. So I'm very much looking forward to the game. This is the game I've been looking forward to watch more so than any of the ones last weekend, believe it or not. And I know we had some top 5 matchups. We had some Thursday night primetime games, but I'm excited to sit down in front of the TV and watch this.
I don't feel like we're getting a lot. Like, the TV networks need to do a little better job of pushing the leagues to make sure every week gives you something, because I feel like this week is not particularly great. Now, I realize when we say that usually means there's some game that we're not even thinking about that's completely bonkers, but
no, what you're saying is there's no just natural, here's the game everyone's waiting for.
No, yeah, you've got Texas-Alabama, which is a great helmet game, but doesn't look like a great competitive game on paper. Florida-Kentucky looks like a pretty competitive game. That looks pretty interesting. But where are the other ones?
Well, I mean,
Arkansas-South Carolina I'm pretty excited about.
The official regular season ass game is this week, and that is Pitt-Tennessee.
That's true.
I don't know if I could make up a better matchup for you to watch personally as a human.
Should we have a bet on that one?
You want to bet on Pitt too? You want to add it in?
We have a couple days to figure it out. Like we're going to record Thursday night, the Friday show where we pick against the spread. I do think we can. It just occurred to me we're picking against the spread and we're betting about mustard. Should we have another? we had mayo. Now we have mustard. Do we need to add another? Like, is this a relish game? I don't know.
Let me call you out on something and you tell me if I'm right.
Okay.
part of me thinks that part of you wants to do the mustard challenge.
Oh, part of you is wrong because all of me wants to do the mustard challenge because I love mustard.
So if you want to do the mustard challenge, then we can come up with a way to incorporate the Tennessee-Pitt game where we both have to do it.
Ooh, I like it.
But you can't come up with a way where neither of us does it. So why don't we do the show? I'll marinate on a bet that we could do that will incorporate both games, but it cannot result in neither of us doing it because I know that the audience is very much anticipating one of us having to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there a prop that we can throw into Tennessee-Pittsburgh that forces an outcome? That's the way we might have to think about it.
Yes. Yeah, but I do think that you betting on Pitt for some condiment challenge would only be poetic justice. It would just be poetic in general because last year you had to eat the mayo because of a Pitt game, didn't you? So
it was 2 years ago. It was Pitt NC State, and it was really when we figured out how good Devin Leary was when he led NC State on that game-winning drive in the final minute.
I was in Costco this morning picking up some water bottles. Costco, great place for a family when you have a family. I never
have a baby.
I never shopped there ever before.
Here, Liv. Here's a box of 74 mini bags of potato chips.
No, but what it is good for is diapers and soaps and water bottles. Certain things that you buy with great regularity where you can
and when you have a teenage son who plays on a football team and his friends come over, you better have that wholesale club membership.
Yeah, who doesn't need 77 Capri Sun bottles? But I'm going to go down the condiment aisle and see if we can get you we got to cover all the condiments. So the next week we'll just get you a whole barrel of relish that you have to eat with a fork with a spoon. But we're going into week 2 here, so we're going to ease in. We got overeating challenge for week 2. See if there's a way that you can, I can get you to do it because I think I'm on the wrong side of this thing. And, I'll have a funny show next Friday.
I think that'd be fine. I think if we both have to do that mustard challenge, it would be pretty interesting. But we do need to figure out a way to make it interesting during these games. And I think you're right. I think the Pitt Tennessee game is a great game to bet on. I'm looking through the schedule right now. There are a couple more that
I think it hit
okay.
me.
All right. What you got?
They're not at the same time. So
they're not.
Depending on what happens.
Okay.
If Texas doesn't cover, for instance, and I'm on the hook, then I'll give you a chance for a double or nothing.
I like it.
So if Pitt does cover, but you have to take Pitt. You didn't give me a choice.
Okay.
You didn't give me a choice for mine. I'm putting you on
Pitt, baby.
They're getting
Pitt's getting 6.5 points right now. Okay.
If Pitt covers, then I have to eat 2 bottles of the mustard.
No, you don't have to eat 2 bottles. We're not going to. 1 bottle is enough, but I'm okay with that. I like it. Yeah, you can worm your way out of it.
Here's what I'll say.
Does what Pitt does to me.
If I lose, then you are on the hook for another bet that I'm not a part of.
Okay.
So if you go 2-0, then you don't have to eat it. And if you want to eat it because you want to be a part of the thing, that's fine.
Okay.
But if Texas doesn't cover the spread, then you are on the hook for Pitt in the next game. And if Pitt covers, then you're off the hook completely. But you have to take on an extra bet that doesn't involve me. That's
fine. Well, that's what Nicole's going to be joining us on those shows this year. She actually can't join us this week, but she'll be with us next week. So what we can do is come up with a bet that Nicole can take part in too. And it'll be good. We're going to have some fun. So I think you're right. And I'm going through this list, and there's actually some games that I'm giving short shrift to. Like Baylor BYU could be a lot of fun.
Yes.
Houston Texas Tech could be a lot of fun.
You're missing one too that I hope you say when you go down the list. Do you want me to hit
Washington State, Wisconsin?
That's right.
Okay.
Washington State, Wisconsin is like the 2 opposites coming together for a game. And I think that's always very intriguing. It's like, will the pass-happy offense that throws it all over the place beat the team that runs out of the eye. Like, I don't know. Like, that'll be fun. It's just fun, compelling television.
Well, so I am going to be in person live at the Florida-Kentucky game this week. I can report back to you exactly what Anthony Richardson and Will Levis look like in person. And I'm excited about that. I know the Draftniks will be excited about that. For those who didn't see the news, I'm starting a new podcast on the Athletic Football Show feed. Me and our draft expert, Dane Brugler, are going to be doing prospects to pros. So we're going to be talking once a week about NFL draft and what the college season means for that. So this Anthony Richardson, Will Levis matchup is pretty prime for that. So I want to make sure I'm there in person and can report back. But I know Anthony Richardson is your new crush. So
yes,
I'll give you the full download because I'm fascinated by this game because
but Mark
now
Stoops is my coaching crush.
Exactly. Our coaching crush.
Yes.
I mean, we talk about him having the best job in America. We talk about him doing one of the best jobs in America. They don't have to worry about what Utah had to worry about, where you didn't know what these players will look like in this scheme. At least you've got a game of film on these guys, which I think is better for Kentucky than obviously Utah had. But I'm really interested to see, can Anthony Richardson do this again? Can he be as dynamic as he was against Utah? Can he be better? You know,
that's a really rough opening for the season for Florida too.
No kidding.
That's a really tough 1-2 punch there.
I went into the season going, if they can split the first two, then Billy Napier's fine. Okay, so the worst case scenario now is they split the first two. If they're 2-0 coming out of that, they should feel really good about the future.
Yeah, and I think they're 6-point or 5.5-point favorites in the game. So it'll certainly be interesting. And then one last game, and this is maybe my home bias, but Arizona, Mississippi State kicking off at 10 p.m. Central, 11
SEC
Eastern.
After dark, baby.
I mean, that who doesn't want to watch that at night, you know?
Well, and it's funny because Mississippi State got a preview of it because, you know, we talk about the body clocks and all that. Well, Mississippi State had a lightning delay in their Memphis game that lasted hours. So they were playing deep into the night last Saturday. So their body clocks are going to be perfectly in tune for their trip to Tucson.
Yeah, that's funny because I remember I was up till 2 a.m. and I didn't fall asleep till like 2:30, and I had a flight to Vegas the following morning, and I was watching that game. You want to hear something? My flight took off from Love Field at 7:10, and I didn't wake up till 6:14 because I slept through my alarm, and I still made the flight on time.
That's living close to the airport right there. That's
beautiful. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the best. I mean, I was running through the airport. I wish I had a camera.
I mean, the two best things about where you live are your distance to Love Field and your distance to that particular Heim barbecue location.
Yes, and there's a
Mockingbird Lane.
There's a Whataburger a quarter of a mile from me too.
You were living the Texas dream. Where's the nearest Specs? That's the question.
That's why there's one right across the street.
There you go.
They say location, location, location. You say it 3 times. Love Field, Heim, Whataburger, add a Specs in there, which if you're unfamiliar is a huge liquor store. It's all within a 1 to 2 minute drive, except Love Field's like 8 minutes away, but good location.
That's tremendous. And now, did you sleep on that plane too?
I did get a little bit of sleep on the plane too, because it wasn't full, thank God. And I tweeted, there's no worse place in the world, though, than a 2-day bender in Vegas and then being in the departures terminal at McCarran Airport.
It is tough.
It's always hot in there. It's always super packed, and everybody is collectively feeling like crap.
And you got the complete degenerates playing slots. Like, I got to get one more in before I get on that plane.
I play the slots in the airport.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
People hit jackpots in those.
Oh, yeah. This is true.
Don't knock gambling in the airport. Okay.
Let's talk about something that happened on Tuesday that I thought was fascinating. And I've seen people going back and forth on Twitter about this, and everybody's an expert. You and I have been involved in a lot of press conferences, and we've dealt with coaches as beat writers and in different situations. So let's talk about Brian Kelly and Lee Vann from the Editor's Advocate. I'm going to play you this clip. And I just want your unfiltered opinion on this thing, because I'm curious if we land in the same place.
That we'll open it up to this late arriving media crowd that must have enjoyed the weekend. That's usually $10 that we put in the kitty. We'll have a big bash at the end of the year at my place. I don't think it has anything to do with winning. I think it has to do with being on time.
So if you couldn't hear Lee in there, she said, if you'd have won, maybe I'd give you the $10, basically, to Brian Kelly, who's coming off the loss against Florida State in his opener at LSU. This was fun. Like I heard this and I'm like, oh boy, this is good. So yeah. Ari, what was the first thing through your mind when you heard this?
That the funniest person to say that to is Brian Kelly.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, like Brian Kelly, and I don't know, I didn't cover him at Notre Dame, so I don't know what his general aura is, but my understanding of him was that he wasn't always the funnest person to be around. So at LSU, ever since he got there, I feel like there's this like high flying, like attempt to be personable. And
well, I will say, like day to day though, at Notre Dame, he would joke and
yeah.
Now, what's interesting is he had a couple jokes that just didn't land when he was very famously didn't land. Like when Katie George asked him after the Florida State game last year, and he tries to do the John. Is it John Robin? No, I'm blanking on McKay, John McKay, the John McKay USC coach line. Asked about his team's execution. He said, I'm in favor of it. That whole thing.
Yeah.
And it didn't land right. And Tessitore kind of rescued him by explaining the joke after they threw it back in the booth. But he is one who will try to joke around.
Yeah. I've been to a lot of press conferences, and usually when your team loses at a place that is passionate about their team as LSU, like whenever Ohio State lost, it felt like a funeral in there because everybody was just like in shock. The coach was on edge. The entire city was upset. So like if it's anything like that at LSU, like his temperament as a coach walking in there after losing the way that they did, it almost felt like, what are we doing here? Like you got to get to the heart of it.
But
people are upset.
He gave away that he's not in that mood by joking, hey, normally we would charge you $10. I loved this because having been a beat writer, like I don't think people understand if a coach busts your chops, the quickest way to get into that coach's good side is bust right back.
Yeah.
That is, and Lee tweeted afterward that they talked afterwards. She apologized to him and he's like, no, it's cool. You still owe me $10. So it sounds like it worked out very well because that's what it's hard when you're dealing with a coach in their first year and you're trying to learn how to cover them and learn what the rhythms of everything are. It's very hard to develop a relationship. Sometimes I find that something like that allows the beat writer and the coach to actually forge a relationship. So I actually think that's going to work out well in the future.
Yeah. And maybe it will for her. I just try to put myself in my position or in her position. If it were me, with the coaches that I've dealt with in the past. And like if Urban Meyer lost a game and then I said that same thing to him, you covered him. Like that wouldn't have been funny there. Like, you know what I mean? Like that.
You kind of have to read the room on that. I mean, there were press conferences where Urban Meyer and I joked around.
Yeah.
Or situations where like after practice, you're walking back with him and you have a
press conference setting. And Urban Meyer in a press conference wasn't always the same Urban Meyer.
He ain't. Yeah. He's not lighthearted after a loss.
That's right. Ever. But after a loss, I'm trying to like put myself in that room and, you make a joke like, hey, if you would have won, then maybe I would be here on time. Like, I don't think he would have thought that was funny. So as long as the coach is in on it, which Brian Kelly seemingly was, then, I don't know why people are freaking out about it. Like it seems to be a talking point on Twitter about, why she shouldn't have said that and all that stuff. It's like, it seems like it's harmless. So,
well, and that's what you try to explain to people who've never done the beat writer job before. Like sometimes a coach screaming at you, mad about something you've written is the best thing that can happen for your relationship with that coach, because then you actually you get to have a human conversation with them and that changes things. And so I think this probably will wind up helping all parties involved. And I thought Brian Kelly came off pretty well on that.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you, how many times has a coach called you yelling at you before?
Not a ton. Not a ton. There have been some who disagreed. I've had an AD call me saying, hey, you got this wrong, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like if you can talk it out usually. And at the end of the conversation, you usually wind up in a better place than even where you started.
Yeah. Yeah. It's happened to me a few times. But,
yeah,
as long as your facts are straight.
Yes.
That's the thing. Like, you have to have
your facts if you're
straight.
actually wrong as the writer, don't double down. Just apologize. Just, I messed up. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I've never been in a scenario where I was factually wrong. So I always was very able to do it. But, the one time that happened with Urban Meyer, it worked out in my favor because he gave me a one-on-one interview to clarify what he meant. And one time with an assistant coach on Ohio State, who may or may not still be on the staff, I don't want to give it away, just doesn't like me. So, there are
who doesn't like you?
He called me a shit stirrer.
You kind of are.
And I didn't really, in that scenario, I really wasn't being one, which is why we're not in a good spot. But, it happens. And you have to do your job. And the thing about our job is that people consume it. And what you say and what you write matters. And what you say in a press conference and what you ask in a press conference, especially if you cover a team where the fans are psycho enough to listen to them live, which, the teams that we talk about the most in this podcast have those types of fans. So you got to be very careful about how you carry yourself and the things that you say. And I mean, I once asked Urban Meyer if he would sleep over at a recruit's house in a news conference. That's a good
question. Yeah, right after Harbaugh did it.
Yeah, I just said, hey, did you ever sleep over? And, he looked at me and goes, no. So, it didn't land. But, you have that.
But it did. It probably did because he's like, oh, this is a chance for me to needle Harbaugh. And that response.
I was hoping that he would have had a really funny, but it was just kind of like a smirk and a no. But,
I remember there was a back and forth between Nick Saban and Ian Rappaport back in the day when Ian was covering Alabama for AL.com. And, he wasn't the famous NFL reporter that he is now, but Ian's a good reporter and had good relationships and understood how to deal with that. And it was an over-signing question, I think, and they went back and forth, and people were like, Nick Saban's bullying him. I'm like, I don't think Nick Saban's bullying him, because Saban was kind of joking a little bit, and Ian was kind of giving it back to him, and you realize, okay, this is what happens when a good beat writer and a good coach, maybe they don't agree on the issue, or maybe one is trying to ask questions the coach finds uncomfortable, but both of them, probably there's some mutual respect there, and you get a good back and forth.
I'm going to find the YouTube clip, but I don't know how we got on this topic, but I think people like hearing this stuff because it kind of gives them a little bit of a behind the scenes thing. But when I was 21, my first year on the Ohio State beat, and Tressel was still the head coach, there was a game at Iowa where, and you might remember this game because it was on TV, and Terrell Pryor was yelling in Jim Tressel's face and in the assistant's face, basically having an outburst. On the sideline. And after the game, I was 21. I wanted to ask about it because I thought it was important. And Jim Tressel had the nicest, longest answer that basically was "screw you, kid." And he said, "You've obviously never played football before." And it was this funny. It was the only way that the senator himself could be condescending. And I want to get that clip so we can play it on the show one day. But I remember everyone was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Everyone was mad at Tressel for treating me like that, because I still was only 21. And that was kind of my welcome to the big show. But I never had a back and forth public display of displeasure with a coach.
Here's my thing, though. If you get a great answer,
it's all that matters. Yeah.
You've done your job, and the coach has done their job. So I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Ari, speaking of coaches doing their job, there's a really interesting clip from Steve Sarkisian's press conference from Monday talking about Nick Saban and what he does well. And it inspired me to come up with a little game. So we're going to hear Sark on Saban. And then I am going to name former Nick Saban assistants who became head coaches. And we are going to figure out what things they took from Saban and what they ignored and why it killed them. So we're going to do that when we come back. We'll be right back. It's college football season, which means you need Sling TV, where you can watch unbeatable college football coverage starting at just $35 a month. Get everything you love about college football, rivalries, marching bands, bowl games, conference power rankings, all of it comes with Sling. Plus, Sling has all the big games on the biggest channels: ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN3, SEC Network, ACC Network, Fox, Big Ten Network, Pac-12 Network, Longhorn Network. That's right, I watched Quinn Ewers' debut on Sling. The best part is getting Sling is easy. It's easy to set up and even easier to use. You can stream on any device and record up to 50 hours with your included DVR space. Plus, you won't get locked into a long-term contract. So if you're looking for the perfect place to spend your Saturdays, you need to take a look at Sling, where you can get everything you love about college football for the best price. Check out sling.com for special offers. Sling, the live TV you love for a price you'll love. Try it today. You might have heard a few weeks ago when I was complaining that my wife pretty much immediately stole my soft, perfect Roback hoodie that I got when Roback decided to come on to be a sponsor. Well, I got another one, and it is the most amazing hoodie. And I have to keep it hidden so nobody else in my family steals it. But it is as great as I remember. And, oh, by the way, you probably should order two if you're going to order one, because somebody's going to take it. Probably the same with any of Roback's stuff. The performance polos, hands down the best out there. They sent me one called the Florida Man. It's in orange and blue. It's got little states of Florida all over it. There's an Alabama version that's in crimson with some Alabamas on it. There's a Georgia version that's red and black with some Georgia state outlines on it. Yeah, I think Roback knows who they're talking to. They know their audience. By the way, they're also leading the NIL charge. They got Will Anderson, Bijan Robinson, and Michael Meyer helping them out this year, and getting a little scroll in the process. Roback also has just started making their everyday shorts. I've got a couple pairs of these. You will want to wear them every day. They're very aptly named. So use the code Andy on roback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers through the end of the week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all polos, hoodies, Q-zips, shorts, you name it. Just use the code Andy. Roback.com. Use the code Andy. Welcome back. So we were talking about Steve Sarkisian facing Nick Saban. And Ari, it got me thinking about a conversation I had with somebody at Florida last week. And obviously Florida has tried a couple different former Saban assistants, or actually on their third former Nick Saban assistant as head coach. They had Will Muschamp, they had Jim McElwain, and now they've got Billy Napier. And what this person was saying that I thought was really interesting was not every former Nick Saban assistant takes the right things from Nick Saban. They don't take what really matters, or they don't take everything. They take a piece of this and a piece of that. And then sometimes it falls apart because they didn't take all the stuff. They didn't understand that it all matters. And so I was going back through Steve Sarkisian's press conference on Monday, and somebody asked him a question about what he learned working for Nick Saban. And Sark gave a great answer. And it got me thinking about, okay, is Sark going to be one of those guys who takes all the right things, or is he not? And he's in an interesting case because he also worked with Pete Carroll when Pete Carroll was having tons of success at the college level. And so he's seen dynasties built a couple different ways. But I want you to listen to this clip, Ari. Steve Sarkisian on Nick Saban. And then I'm going to name some former Saban assistants, and we're going to figure out what they took from Saban and then what they ignored, and where that caused the problem. So here is Steve Sarkisian on Nick Saban.
Back on Coach Saban, you've worked with Coach Carroll, Coach Saban. Boil it down. What was the number one thing you learned from Nick Saban during your time in Tuscaloosa? It's
always a tough question, because you hate to narrow a man like that down into one thing. But I would say discipline. And I'm not saying disciplining of the players. I'm saying self-discipline. He's a very regimented man. He knows his routine. He stays disciplined in his routine. And then his expectation is his staff and his players are going to have that same discipline approach off the field and on the field. And but it starts with him. You know, he practices what he preaches, and then there's a standard and expectation of what's expected of you and how you go about your business. And so that's the biggest thing I would say. But man, we could be up here for hours talking about things that I learned from him and what he's done in that program, and not just in that program, but in his stops along the way, and what he's done for guys like myself, and what he's done for hundreds and thousands of players that have come through that have played for him.
All right, so that's Steve Sarkisian. I thought that's a good example. The discipline of Nick Saban, like it doesn't matter what week it is, what year it is. He's got a part of every week where he calls recruits. And he's got, usually like the top recruits on Alabama's board are the ones that Nick Saban says, I'll take these guys. And it doesn't matter what's going on, what time of the year it is, as long as he's allowed to do it, he's doing it. And nothing ever gets in the way of that. And so here's my question, Ari. Can Steve Sarkisian be that guy at Texas? Because that was what he was saying is that personal self-discipline rubs off on the staff, rubs off on the players. And we've talked about one of Nick Saban's superpowers is he gets 18 to 22-year-olds to perform in a similar way week after week after week, which other coaches don't seem to be able to do. That's definitely not something Texas did last year. Can Sark be that guy at Texas?
You know what I think is interesting about that question is that you're basically asking whether or not somebody can duplicate what is an inherent part of who he is as a person. Because truly motivated people don't need to learn that trait or don't need to try to copy that trait. Nick Saban as a person has such a high standard of excellence that he cannot function as a person without continually doing those things. So when you ask me, can Steve Sarkisian do those things? The answer to that question is probably yes, because anybody can motivate themselves. But will they be as disciplined and infallible with it week after week after week when things go wrong or things are happening? Like it's like somebody who gets into a workout routine. There's certain people who can't function in their day without doing it, and there are motivated people who look at those people and say, hey, I'm going to go in the gym too. Which one do you think has a better chance of continuing that habit? The person that it's ingrained in, or the person who's trying to copy that?
I do think it's something you can pick up though as you go, because talking to people who've been around Saban, the thing they all tell you is he actually enjoys the process, the grind. Like the parts,
you have to.
The parts that aren't the result, that result in the result. And I will tell you, as I've gotten older, I have started to enjoy that process stuff more, like with the whole weight loss stuff for me. I used to think of running as punishment or lifting weights as a punishment. And then I realized, no, this is the only, if I actually enjoy doing this, then I'm going to get something out of it. If I keep looking at it as something to be avoided, then I'll never get in the routine I need to be in. And I didn't figure that out probably until my 30s, maybe even my 40s.
Yeah.
I do think it's something you can learn. It's hard to learn. Like it's hard to, if you're not built to enjoy practice, like we're talking about practice. If you're set up, your personality is, well, I love the games, but I hate practice. It's hard to become the person who loves practice.
Yeah. No, there's no question about it. And the thing that I've always admired about Nick Saban is that after he's won all these championships and after he's accomplished everything that he's accomplished, you always think, or I've always said, unplug. You did it. Enjoy yourself. Go off into the sunset. Run out the clock in style. I always say that,
yeah.
And he doesn't have that trait in him. And I feel like he could win the next 5 championships in a row. And I still think that he would be calling those recruits at that time of the day.
Because he enjoys that more than raising the trophy. That's why.
So when you ask me, can somebody duplicate that? If they can, that'll be pretty successful. But you want to know my take as an outsider? because I've only ever asked Nick Saban questions on teleconferences or in news conferences. His level of accountability for everything. Like everybody talks about work ethic. And my dad actually said this to me on the phone a few years ago, and it just kind of stuck with me. But he said, when you watch an Alabama game happen, if somebody messes up or if something happens, it doesn't matter what the score is, doesn't matter the point in the game, Nick Saban is over there reaming that person out.
He freaks out the same anyway. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And there's a certain level of accountability that the players feel and the coaches of that position group feel every minute of every day without a single moment of reprieve from it. Because he wants to be excellent with everything that they do at all times, regardless of whether or not it is a play that is going to win or lose them a football game. And I think that type of passion and accountability with everything you do, whether it is who you send in from a personnel package or how many recruiting calls you made or whatever it is that you do, every single person in that building knows that they have to be at their best or there will be consequences for it. And I think that when you look at what other coaches have done, and we might go down the list of coaches, like you said, that, came from the coaching tree and didn't have success, even though a lot of his coaches are very successful right now, and be like, well, what don't they do? But I feel like coaching hires, coaching firings or move-ons, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
Benching players, putting players in the game at inopportune times because that's the best thing to win, like they did with Tua in the national title game. Every single thing that man does is, I require excellence right now, and if you can't give it to me, somebody else will. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anybody else in college football runs their program with that level of intensity 365 days a year.
It's true. The other thing he does that I find really interesting, and when I think back across my different employments that I wish my boss would have done, is every year he takes every person in the organization and he decides what their role exactly is and what is expected of them. And he tells them that every person in the organization is told, this is what you are expected to do. And I thought, guys, I've worked at places where they don't tell you what's expected of you. You don't get that feedback. Just knowing that, I think, helps. But it takes a ridiculous attention to detail to every year do that.
Because if you're doing it with GAs, you're doing it with freshmen, and you got coaches that don't know some of the walk-ons' names.
This is why I've never wanted to be management, because I don't want to have to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
also it's a motivational tactic too that says, hey, you know what, Andy? We want you to spearhead the expansion of the podcasting network. We want you to have this many subscriptions, this many story ideas that are unique. And if you do those things, you will be successful within our organization. And you have a list of what's expected of you. Then what do you do for the next year? Everything in your power to achieve those goals.
And interestingly enough, The Athletic is the most analytics-driven, goal-oriented company that I've worked for. And it is easier. It has made my life easier knowing what they want out of me.
And if you don't have a goal, then sometimes you don't know what you're working towards.
Yeah.
And that might sound stupid because everyone would just be like, well, to win a national title.
Yeah.
But
that's never the goal at Alabama. Is never the goal. The goal at Alabama is whatever the next thing in front of you is, dominate that thing, whether it is a bench press rep, whether it is an English test, whether it is, a third down play at practice. Like, it is the next thing is the only thing that matters. You must be excellent now. And so let's go through some of the former Saban coaches who have been successful and who have been unsuccessful. And let's see I want to figure out what they've taken and maybe what they've missed. So I want to start with one who has been, I would say, objectively very successful. Now, he and Nick Saban had some heat this offseason, but he's won a national title. He's won a bunch of games. He plays Nick Saban every year. His name is Jimbo Fisher. What do you think Jimbo Fisher took, and what do you think he might have missed?
I think Jimbo Fisher probably of all the coaches that we're going to go through is the CEO of his program.
There's one other one I think might be better.
But who am I missing? I mean, well, I guess we'll get to it. I don't know who. Oh, Kirby. But that's not what I would say about Kirby. You know what I'm going to say about Kirby.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, I think that like the idea that he is the leader of that organization and everybody looks to him no matter what their role is for their goal, I think is an interesting thing to look at for him. He's been a hell of a recruiter, you know, especially last year. But I feel like of all the coaches that are coaching college football, if you were to say who are the top 5 CEOs in college football, Jimbo Fisher would have to be in that top 5, right?
Yes, I would agree. Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. And he took the process-oriented part that they're not a big, you know, our goal is to win the SEC or our goal is to win the national championship. That they don't talk about that at all. They do a lot of the same things in terms of how they talk to players about what to expect and about what's expected of them. The one thing that I feel like Jimbo Fisher kind of missed is the adaptability. And now he worked for Saban a long, long time ago. It was not with him at Alabama when he was making these big schematic changes. So it may be that they didn't work together through that, so it wouldn't have rubbed off. But Aaron Murray, the former Georgia quarterback, I work with him on SiriusXM. He says this a lot of the time when we talk about Jimbo Fisher and his quarterbacks. And once he said it, I could never unsee it now when I watch them play. If you're watching on the YouTube, you'll see what I'm doing with my hands. So Jimbo Fisher's quarterbacks are taught to hold the ball like this, right? Kind of cocked by their ear with both hands on it. And that's how they're moving around in the pocket. And it drives Aaron Murray crazy because he says, yes, that is how everybody taught it through the 90s and early 2000s. But the game has changed such that you got to let your quarterback flow a little more organically through the play. And sometimes that may cost you in terms of ball security. And also it may cost you in terms of release time because he's not in that ready to throw position right away. But he's like, if you have a talented dual threat kind of guy like Haynes King right now, if you let him be more natural with the football, he will make more natural snap fast decisions with the football.
Right.
And it's like, when he said that, I was like, I never thought, but it does seem like they don't move as quickly. Their quarterbacks don't sight like.
I mean, you can even make the case for the entire offensive philosophy there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But like, if you watch Bryce Young play, if you watched Mac Jones play, everything was very organic the way they moved around. And yes, that obviously they were working within the confines of the offense, but they were not mechanically robotic because clearly their coaches looked at them and said, okay, you do what you need to do to get the ball out. As long as you get it out on time and within the strictures of this play, we're good.
And you're dealing with really, really good athletes too.
Yes.
And I think that continually having them work on the same thing or drill the same thing makes them more robotic. And the worst thing that you can do to an athlete that is as smooth as some of the guys who are playing in those programs is that make them robotic. You know, you want them to be natural and smooth. And I think you can make the case that Bryce Young is the smoothest, most natural quarterback that we've just since Kyler Murray, maybe.
Exactly. I was about to mention that. My favorite thing Bryce Young does is when he's trying to keep the play alive, when he's going through his reads and first read's not open, second read's not open. He's so elegant moving around behind the line of scrimmage. And he seems to have a sense of where people are and when he's in trouble. I think Kyler was probably better at that than him because maybe Kyler was better at that than almost anyone ever.
Yeah.
But it's so much fun watching Bryce move around behind the line of scrimmage. He's not thinking, I have to do this. He's like, okay, that didn't work. That guy's not open. I'm going to keep moving. Oh, there it is. Got it. And
also the people too that play that way, I don't think are any more or less prone to turnovers than people who hold the ball up by their ear hole.
Right. And does it change the quickness of the release? And I will defer to Aaron on this because he's actually played quarterback in the SEC, and he said it doesn't really affect the quickness of your release that much. In fact, it may slow you down a little bit just because you are kind of moving through that way and in what your body considers to be an awkward position. So that's just one of those things. I think Jimbo Fisher pretty much took everything else, but that adaptability, and you're right, the entire offensive scheme, because you're in Texas right now. Like, and he hired Darryl Dickey, and they did add, a lot more read option into the offense when he got to Texas A&M that wasn't necessarily there when they were at Florida State. But there's a lot more you can probably do with those quarterbacks, especially like Haynes King, who's a good runner. And I feel like that's the next step. If you get to that step in their evolution with the level of talent they have on the roster, then you're year after year like Saban is. Right.
I mean, adaptability is like a really large wing of that corporation. And I think that you could probably apply that to multiple different things too.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the coach. I liked what he did with his pants, but that was about it. Derek Dooley at Tennessee worked with Nick Saban at LSU.
Was he the coach when you covered Tennessee?
No, Philip Fulmer was the coach when I covered Tennessee.
Okay.
But Dooley, and I can just from dealing with people at Tennessee over the years, Dooley went in there like he knew everything. If you know Nick Saban, he never acts like he knows everything. I mean, he may come off like he does know everything, but behind the scenes, he's asking tons of questions. How do I do this? How do I do this? How can we do this better? And Derek Dooley was like, I got this. Yeah. Like that's the worst attitude you can come up with.
Yeah, and I also think too that when you are a coach that has an insatiable desire to learn, that is what bleeds directly into adaptability. Mm-hmm. Because if you go into something knowing, hey, you know what, I might not know the answer to this, and you respect the people that you're talking to enough to take them seriously, and they say something that you didn't know or you learned from, then you might go back to your organization and say, hey, let's do it this way, or let's try this new thing, or I heard this. That to me is an important thing. And people who coaches who go to coaching conventions and take stuff away from there.
Yeah. Take notes, take a new thing.
All these people should be learning from me. I'm learning from them. Yeah. That to me, I think is an important part of it. Because I think adaptability means a lot. Are you adapting your recruiting philosophy? Mm-hmm. Are you adapting your techniques that you're teaching your players? Are you adapting your playbook? Are you adapting to the way the game is being played? Which I think goes hand in hand with philosophy. But there are a lot of coaches right now that are running systems that are maybe 10 years past their prime to this day, and it's how are you going to keep up with the game?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this a ton on this show with Iowa, with Kirk Ferentz. And, I actually don't think Iowa needs to make major structural changes to the offense. I just think they need to modernize a little bit and have somebody who can develop quarterbacks better, coach the quarterbacks. They don't have to do anything drastic.
But I don't know if you know this, but Dooley's an analyst at Alabama now.
Yeah. Well, he was in the NFL for a while. And so maybe that's how you do it. You go back into the analyst thing and figure out that maybe you don't know everything. And
the coaching tree is an interesting thing because you can always go back to the tree.
That's exactly right. All right. I'll give you another one. Jim McElwain, Colorado State, then Florida, now Central Michigan. Having covered that one pretty closely, when you get to Florida, he did a good job at Colorado State. But when you get to Florida, obviously the pressure ratchets up. He wins the SEC East 2 years in a row, but it was a very down SEC East. They were getting smoked by Florida State at the end of the year. There was a big talent gap. I think he missed the recruiting piece of it. He missed that you have to be your staff's most aggressive recruiter, and you have to make sure you're beating the teams that you're supposed to beat on the field on the recruiting trail on a regular basis. Now, McElwain got some good guys. They went and found Kyle Trask in Texas, who wound up being a very good player. They got Kyle Pitts out of Philadelphia, who was a guy that a lot of people knew about. Brad Davis was on that staff at the end. He's LSU's current O-line coach. He had Jamar Chase committed when Jim McElwain got fired. So they were doing okay on that front, but it wasn't to the level of Nick at Alabama or Kirby at Georgia.
Yeah, and he's actually doing pretty well in the MAC.
Oh yeah, he's doing great in the MAC because you don't have. It's more about how you coach him up in the MAC. It's not as much about can you get the best of the best players and then coach them up.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that there's probably other examples from the Saban tree that you could just say, like, if you want to go right into Kirby, like I think Kirby has an insatiable appetite to recruit the best players.
Well, let's talk about Kirby in a second because I think he's the most perfect copy,
most perfect protege.
Yeah, except he's got an advantage that even Nick never had.
Yeah, I mean,
so let's talk about that when we come back. Let's talk about Athletic Greens. If you're looking to get better gut health, more energy, or a stronger immune system in a really easy, natural way, you've got to check out Athletic Greens. I'm sure you'll all agree that most of us are not huge fans of taking a handful of pills or vitamins in the morning. But with Athletic Greens, you can get rid of all those extra vitamin bottles and finally make some room in your cabinet. Athletic Greens is an all-in-one solution that actually tastes good. You're going to enjoy getting your daily vitamins. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into cold and flu season. It's just one scoop and a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Andy Staples. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Andy Staples to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. That's athleticgreens.com/Andy Staples. Upside is a cashback app that enables people to get more value from their purchases and improves the profitability of local businesses so communities grow stronger. They partner with over 30,000 businesses and 25,000 gas stations across 48 states, plus the District of Columbia. How does it work? You open up your app, you claim an offer for whatever you're buying, whether it's gas, food, groceries, you name it. You check in at the business and you choose which card you're using, or you can upload a receipt picture later, pay as usual, and then you get paid. The cash appears in your Upside account, and you can cash out at any time, either through a bank transfer, PayPal, or an e-gift card to Amazon, Starbucks, or dozens of other places. There's no limit to how much you can earn. It's super easy to use, and most businesses don't require you to upload receipts. You can just check in and then transfer the cash you've earned right after checking into your account. And this is real cash back. No points, loyalty rewards, ever shifting. You got to do this to get this. Nope. Yeah, users get real cash and they can cash out at any time. Upside also works with loyalty, cashback, and credit or debit card rewards programs. It's loved by businesses and users alike. Users are earning 3 times more cash back with Upside than with any other product, including loyalty programs and credit card rewards. Plus, sharing Upside with friends helps you increase your earnings. They'll get an extra 15 cents a gallon cash back the first time they use the app, and you'll get a one-time 15 cents per gallon bonus. You'll also earn a 1 cent per gallon for every gallon they buy forever. So give Upside a try. You're going to these places anyway. You're supporting local businesses. May as well get some cash back while you're doing it. All right. Let's talk Kirby Smart, because I do think he is probably the best copy of Saban to this point, where he understood everything that Saban did that worked. I think we looked at him as being sort of schematically intractable. And I think if you watch Georgia's offense now, you realize, no, he was making it a pretty versatile offense. It's just that he knew he had a pretty damn good defense, and they didn't have to do everything.
Yeah, he's the perfect Nick Saban copy, but he also has the most advantageous position too.
Correct. This is the job. If you ask Nick Saban, if you gave him a truth serum all those years, whether he was at LSU or Alabama, what's the best job in America? He would have told you Georgia. And so to have somebody almost exactly like him in the position at Georgia, well, now you're seeing what that means, because Georgia just won a national title, and then you just saw them annihilate what I think is going to wind up being a pretty good Oregon team. They made them look like an FCS team.
Yeah, well, the thing that I think is interesting about Georgia then maybe this is just a wacky Ari Wasserman theory. But if you look at what they have in state on their recruiting board on a given year, they have anywhere between 10 and 20, blue chip prospects, maybe even more, top 10 to 20 really good, highly rated ones.
You could build a national title contender using only players from the state of Georgia if you had to.
Yeah, probably. But if you go look at the way that Georgia's classes have finished, he hasn't taken that as what he's going to do. Like, he has demanded even more than what he's been given. And I think a much weaker coach, or a coach that doesn't understand the pursuit of excellence in a relentless fashion, would rest on that advantage, take more players out of the state of Georgia, and do their best to assemble what they could build with their in-state talent. Georgia's recruiting board is as national as it gets.
Right. Brock Bowers is from Napa, California.
I mean, they go out and they get guys.
Yeah.
5-star prospects.
Keely Ringo's from Scottsdale, Arizona.
Right. And you could have found a defensive back or a linebacker or a receiver or whatever you want to do, a tight end out of Atlanta. Why doesn't he do that? Because he knows there's better. And I think that is a personification of his entire attitude of the way that he runs that program.
Yep. Yeah, it's not about finding the best players in Georgia and winning for Georgia. It's about finding the best players, because that's how you win.
And even if you think Georgia could win 11 games a year with only Georgia players, which you could make the case they would, if you could win 12 by recruiting nationally, then what are you going to do? You're going to change the thing that makes you excellent. And I don't think that every coach in America would do that.
Yep. And that's what's interesting to me about Billy Napier at Florida, because he's come in and at least seemingly has done all of the things that you're supposed to do. We'll see what happens with him, because he's getting guys to look at, he's getting guys to visit. Mel Tucker's another Nick Saban acolyte. Same thing. Doing all the things. Will it work? We don't know. Mm-hmm. But so far, they have taken all the steps and things are moving in the direction that they want.
Yeah. So being relentless in what you do, I think, is a common denominator here.
Yeah. Yeah. And understanding that best is, it's funny because Dabo never worked with Nick Saban, but Dabo's mantra, the thing they put all over the walls at Clemson, best is the standard, very similar mindset. And I think most people think, oh, you can be the best sometimes and very good all the time. But Nick Saban demands you be the best all the time. And I think that's what Kirby's doing. That's what Mel Tucker's doing right now. That's what Billy Napier seems to be doing right now. So it's going to be an exciting time for some of these programs, because if this works, if this works at Michigan State, and we've had this argument, but if it really works, they're going to be very competitive in the Big Ten. They're going to be a playoff contender just about every year.
It's like what Billy Napier did with their staff the second he got there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the early returns on some of these guys. It's like sometimes, too, it's just like Florida had a coach that, in my opinion, didn't get it before they hired somebody who gets it. And it's just like knowing from the jump that your coach gets it. Mel Tucker gets it. That's unquestionable.
You're right.
Billy Napier gets it. That's unquestionable. Right.
It doesn't guarantee anything for Michigan State or Florida,
but it's a step one
chance.
Hurdle that, ironically enough, you think it sounds so simple, but there are so many coaches that are being hired that just don't get it or aren't the right fit. So I think that maybe the get it ratio of Nick Saban disciples is probably higher.
And I think it's higher now that they've gotten more of a body of work, because you look at when Mel Tucker worked. Now, Mel Tucker's worked with him at multiple stops. He worked with him at LSU. He then worked with Tressel and Antonio. Then he worked with Saban again after working in the NFL for a while at Alabama. Then he worked with Kirby at Georgia. So he's seen it from a lot of different angles. Billy Napier worked with Saban, as he's probably being his most adaptable.
Does Dan Lanning count?
Dan Lanning definitely counts. I mean, he spent a year in that program, and then now I do think we got to start giving Kirby his own tree at this point.
Because it's like Dan Lanning has as keen of an understanding of what it takes to win a national championship as anybody out there.
Yeah.
And he got a nice little reminder on Saturday.
Yes, he did. And if you go back and listen to him talk before that game and listen to him talk after that game, that's probably one of those deals where he turned on the tape early and knew, okay, we're in trouble.
I don't know that he had to turn on the tape, bud.
That's true. He didn't. He coached those guys.
Yeah.
So he probably telling his staff, hey, boys, we're going to have a learning experience.
Yeah.
So,
and it would be a really helpless situation to be in. Because there aren't a lot of games that Oregon plays in.
It's year one. So you get some
No, I just
grace.
mean in that 1 week, though. I'm not saying that he's in trouble or something. I just mean like if you're a coach turning on the film and just going, well, what are we going to do here?
We can't do anything with that.
Yeah. So, and Oregon's not in that position they beat Ohio State last year.
Yep. I know.
So,
all right, we got one more thing to talk about, though. Our guy, Justin Williams, who covers Cincinnati for us at The Athletic. So, new Big 12 commissioner Brett Yormark was visiting, and he talked to the reporters. And Justin got an interesting quote from him because Brett Yormark was asked about potential expansion. Here's what he said. Obviously, going out west is where I would like to go, entering that fourth time zone. A program that has national recognition, one that competes at the highest level in basketball and football, stands for the right things, is a good cultural fit. Because our alignment right now and the like-mindedness of our member institutions is fantastic. It's never been better. So I don't want to compromise that. And that's critically important, that there's the right cultural fit when you think about coming in and being part of what we're building here. What's he talking about? What program is that?
I think I know what that program is.
What program is that?
I don't want to be wrong, though, and sound like an idiot, but it sounds like Oregon to me.
It sounds like Oregon to me, but can you get Oregon is the question.
That's what it sounded like. I don't know if that's reasonable.
Okay, so if we're going to go
nationally relevant.
If you're going to go recently good at basketball and football, you could actually be talking about San Diego State as well.
Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking about like bigger. I don't know.
Well, if I were him, I'd think big too. Like, and that's the question: is he talking about Oregon, or is he talking about San Diego State? Because if he's talking about Oregon, that man's going elephant hunting. Doesn't mean it's going to work.
Washington's been pretty good at basketball too, haven't they?
They have had good years. They've had a couple really down years too.
Yeah, I'm not really the right person to recall how good somebody was at basketball, but they've had their years. But I'm just trying to think of like what 5 programs on the West Coast.
Oregon's been good at basketball since Dana Altman's been there. So
yeah,
that's a very interesting thing. And obviously, look, your alma mater, not particularly great at football, very good at basketball. I think this could be very interesting because nobody's given up on this. You still have the Pac-12 and the Big 12 kind of sniping at each other over this stuff.
I mean, it did sound like a snipe at the Pac-12 in general.
It did. And it's saying, come join us. We're the better option. And I don't know if that's true or not. They feel very similar. Like I feel like if you were George Kliavkoff from the Pac-12, you could make a similar argument about, hey, good Big 12 program, come here. But I do wonder, though, is one going to kill the other, or are we going to find a situation where the Big 12 does a new TV deal, the Pac-12 does a new TV deal, and they're both kind of where they are? Because I do think with the 12-team playoff, there's a way forward for both of them. It doesn't. One does not have to kill the other to move forward.
Yeah. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we're all sitting on the edge of our seat. We might be sitting there for a while now, but we're sitting on our edge of our seat to see who wins this Plains versus West Coast feud.
And it's so salty too. Everybody thinks that somebody's like, I have no dog in the hunt. Like, I don't care what happens. And you're like, well, you're too pro Big 12 and Stewart's too pro Pac-12. I just don't know.
I don't know that the fans particularly care, as long as their team is in whatever conglomeration they make.
Right. And they feel like two Spider-Men pointing at each other at times. But given the new layout of the playoff and what's going to come, they might be better off being separate, not consolidating in any way, shape, or form.
Right. San Diego State.
Are they still going to be one of the best 6 conferences? Yes.
You got 4 extra ones after the Big Ten and the SEC. That's a lot of room to maneuver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is that's aggressive. That is an aggressive, because whether he's talking about Oregon or San Diego State, I think San Diego State would be a potential expansion target of the Pac-12 as well. So this is going to be some bare knuckle over the next few months.
Yeah. I don't know if they could set betting lines of who's going to win or not, but I don't even know. It'll probably be 50-50, even money.
Yeah. Again, they're not that different. I'm sorry. I know some people think that they are very different, but they're not that different.
I think the Pac-12 has an upper hand on name brands right now.
As long as Oregon and Washington are there. But we know they don't want to be there. We know they want to be in the Big Ten. So
yeah,
that's the other hard part. It's going to be a very interesting next few months, but I do think that the decision to expand the playoff changes the dynamics of all that. I don't know about you, Ari. It feels less desperate to me now. Like,
it feels less desperate to me too.
Yeah. So hopefully everybody can come to a good decision. I don't want to see people kind of kicked out of the nest at this point. Like, I don't want to see one conference kill the other, and then there's like 4 or 5, 6 team, programs that are suddenly looking for a home. So maybe they don't have to. Maybe that doesn't have to happen now, but heck, they still sound aggressive. So we'll find out. Ari, when we come back on Friday, we're picking games. We're making bets. We're doubling or nothing. I'm going to bet on Pitt again. Let's just make a list of condiments, and we're going down the list.
We're going to get through all of them. Yep.
We'll talk to you later. This show is brought to you by Sling TV, the TV you'll love at a price you'll love. Check out sling.com for special offers.